Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hour of Healing, where each week we talk about life changing and thought provoking topics that are engineered to bring you healing no matter what stage of life you are in. Friends, I am your weekly host, Joe Deborah, and today our topic for discussion is what is your advantage? What is your advantage? We have a special guest with us, and he's in the person of Dr. Joel Panthapattu. He's a family medicine physician, board certified, I should say, who currently practices in New Paltz, New York. He also subspecializes in addiction treatments, specifically Suboxone, and also hepatitis C treatment. He is a great physician. He was actually my physician mentor when I was in training, and he has become a dear friend. He's a wonderful husband and also a great, great father. But most importantly, he is a Christian brother, and I love this man dearly. Friends, it will be an honor for us to be able to have a conversation with him today. So before I introduce our topic, let's welcome Dr. Joel Panthapattu. Dr. P, welcome to the show.
Dr. Deborah, Joe, thank you so much for having me on. Um, it's just an honor just to be on. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time. So, Dr. P, we talking about our advantages in life today. And this topic came up to me because when you talk to a lot of young people in our day, our generation, most people want advantages. Some flat out say, I need some advantages in life. So I was wondering to myself, what really is an advantage in life? And how do we go about getting it? Is it something that we get from our personal efforts? Or is it something that external circumstances or the environment gives to us? Is it something we are born with? Is it a spiritual? What really is an advantage and how we get it? And that is why you are here today. So let's set the table. How would we define an advantage? And then we will start diving into why it's even important for us to have one, if it is.
Sure. So I think you highlighted on a great question. What is an advantage? Because I think there's obviously the standard definition that we can all look up, but I think when you look at it from person to person, an advantage can be defined differently
Mm,
based on who is hearing that word and who is defining that word. How
mm,
I like to define an advantage is that it's a certain set of qualities or skills that
mm,
help to shape a person. And something that you had highlighted in the lead up to that question is that it's not always something that an individual can have that they have innately. Sometimes you can develop that advantage,
wow.
and then sometimes that advantage can be in the form of luck or coincidence, you know,
Mm,
or for people of faith, it's something that is given to them, something that's ordained to them.
mm,
And I think that is something that's really important in terms of how we define an advantage.
wow. Wow. Thank you so much. And that is a loaded definition of advantage there. So we're going to try to kind of peel it around it and see. And you made mention of something that I think is very important, and I want you to share some light on it about the chance or the luck component of it. And we will also talk about the spiritual component. How do people of spiritual belief also get advantage? But please elaborate a little bit on how you gain an advantage by chance or through luck.
When it comes from a luck perspective, I don't think there's necessarily any formula when it comes to
Mm,
luck. Luck, just by definition, it happens to be there or not. I joke with my wife all the time that her luck is she has incredible travel luck, I will tell you.
mm, mm.
And my luck with traveling is horrendous, terrible. I have terrible, terrible luck. So whenever we travel together, it's partly sunny or partly cloudy, depending upon how you look at it. We may have a bit of maybe like an hour delay, but we'll get to our destination. But it's funny that whenever we travel, our luck kind of intertwines, and there's elements of both.
Mm,
And I think that when it comes to certain advantages, sometimes you can just be at the right place at the right time. And
mm,
that's the advantage that's been given to you. That's the luck that's been given to you.
wow.
For the average person, they can view it as luck. For people of faith, you can look at it as God interceding in that
Mhm.
moment. And
Providence. Yeah.
yeah, providence. And I think that it's incredibly powerful. It's incredibly wonderful to see that when that happens.
Wow. Wow. So it's almost as though the way you're describing it to me, I'm beginning to sense some form of opportunity here. That advantage, an advantage in life can also then be similar to an opportunity. That being at the right place at the right time can open a door for you that will lead you to your next great move, your next great accomplishment, and things like that. So I think that is very, very powerful. The other question I had on the intro or the definition you gave, we still just peeling the definition here, is there such a thing as being born with an advantage?
Yes, absolutely. I think that there are some people that have God-given ability, and you and I are both big fans of European football.
Yes.
Um, I I would love to score a game-winning Champions League goal at Anfield, Cop End. I would love that. I would love to do that. But
Absolutely.
and I'm sure you would love to score a winning goal at Stamford Bridge.
Oh,
You
of
know,
course.
yeah. But I think it's one of those things where God did not give me that ability to be a professional soccer player.
Mm, mm,
But God gave me gifts and advantages in other arenas.
correct.
And I think that's just an example of something that's given to us by our Creator,
Mm, mm,
something that we can look at, harness, and develop. I think that that's just wonderful and beautiful.
wonderful. Dr. P, this is very interesting because you said it's something that we can harness and develop. And
Mhm.
so, what happens if you don't harness or develop it? And the other question is there such a thing as someone not being born with any advantage at all? Because based on what you described, it seems like everybody has something that they can harness and develop. So, can you kind of mingle those two questions for me?
Yes, I think so. My answer may be a little mixed, convoluted a little bit. I think that especially in this day and age, with social media and with technology, I think that they're wonderful gifts. I think that it's an incredible tool that we have at our disposal to communicate with people that we have not seen in 2 years, and all these things that we have available. But I think the guise in all of this is that we often fall into this comparison trap with other people.
Wow.
And
Wow.
when you look at that, you can easily fall into this trap of thinking that what I have is not worth it, or it doesn't measure up to what that other individual has.
Wow.
And I think that when you go down that rabbit hole, you lose the appreciation of the gift that you do have. The thing is that we may not recognize it. We may not recognize the gifts that we have in that moment, and all we can see is the deficits or the deficiencies that we have. But I think that, as it says in Ecclesiastes, there's a time for everything to happen. There's a season for everything to happen. It may not be the season at the moment right now, but it will be revealed to all of us and it will be shown to all of us. And that advantage is going to be shown to us. And the thing is that when it does get revealed to you, whatever that advantage is, it's going to be wonderful and it's going to be awesome. And it's going to be worth that wait.
Wow. 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 Thank you for that answer. I think that is very powerful. Bringing in, tying in the social media component, because I, like you, I agree absolutely. Social media has done a lot of wonderful things. I mean, this platform is a possibility just because of social media, but it also has led us to a lot of superficial comparisons where we have become more material, we have
Mhm.
become more superficial in the sense that we really don't give a lot of thought to the things that we encountered there and what could have instigated someone to even post what they posted. Maybe a year ago or so, I encountered a group of people who they were talking about how somebody they knew had taken their life. But a day or two before, they had posted something very wonderful, very encouraging online. And it seemed as though when they posted that, everybody felt they had made it. And so I was asking myself, what if the person wanted to know if, in actuality, they were being seen as a failure? And
Mhm.
so they posted that alternative reality of themselves. And so seeing the response to that actually may have tipped it over. And I'm not justifying anybody taking their life or anything
Mhm.
like that. But I am kind of echoing what you're sharing with us, how social media has, in a way, caused us to just compare ourselves to people. I mean, there are people that I traveled recently, I saw them. I was expecting to see them rolling with a Ferrari or something based on their Facebook profile,
Mhm.
and I'm seeing them and I'm like, oh, this is it? Like, really?
Yeah.
So thank you so much for tying that in for us. So I want to ask you then, knowing all these things about advantages, then why do we need advantages in life?
So we need advantages because they help us to navigate our life.
Mm, mm,
The advantages that we have individually, these are tools that are given to us that are at our disposal to help us complete the tasks or to help us achieve the goals that we've set before us.
mm,
You think of Michelangelo or a sculptor with a block of marble,
mm,
but if they don't have the tools necessary to sculpt and craft that piece of stone into art, it's just it's just a resource that's sitting there untapped, waiting to be exposed. The other thing with advantages is that the advantage that we have can also help lift other people in our journey, in this journey called life. The saying goes, a rising tide lifts all boats.
mm,
If when you do something and you can then take that advantage that you have and complete a task, but in the same way, uh, help bring other people along with them and make them better too. That's paying it forward. You're
mm.
doubling on that advantage that you have.
True.
You know, the other thing also is that this helps us, the advantages that we have help us to achieve the best version of ourselves as God intended it. And that,
Mm,
I think, is one of the most profound things when it comes to these advantages, is that when it's utilized properly
mm.
and we help to develop that, it shows God in his infinite wisdom and glory.
Wow, wow, that's wonderful. It helps us be the best version of ourselves. So then I guess it goes to say that we cannot do without advantages in life, really.
No, I think advantages are key. And I think everybody has an advantage. I think
Wow.
the difficult part is narrowing in on it and
Mm.
really taking stock of it and identifying it and then cultivating it.
All right, Dr. P. So then the question is, how do we find that advantage in ourselves, and how do we harness it? And then we will talk about maximizing it next.
So I think, uh, in terms of developing the advantage, I think the first step is to identify it and recognize it and then grow it. You know, we as Christians, the parable of the talents that was
Balance.
given out to
Okay.
the individuals.
Mm,
We hear about the individual who took their talent and buried it, right?
correct.
I think for all of us, we want to use it to to develop it even further.
Mm,
And I think that is something that's key. The other thing is, for if we do have an advantage, is to be honest about that advantage. We
mm,
should not use that advantage to misuse it or use it against others. And I think that's also something that's very a core principle. When it comes to our advantages, we should often, when we recognize it, we should try our best to pay it forward to others. We have a gift, and some others may not have that gift. That's simply how life is. But if we see somebody who's not as fortunate, we should, if we have the ability, if we have a gift, we should use that gift to help that person who is not as fortunate, or to use that gift to help others grow. I think
mm.
that's also a big key thing. A few other things that I always say is stay humble about that gift.
Yeah.
Don't think that because you have a certain advantage in life that it makes you better than the next person that's behind you. It's
Mm,
simply that you have that advantage and the other person has a different advantage. It doesn't
mm,
make one person
mm,
better than the other. So we always need to stay humble from that perspective. The other thing is also, and this kind of ties into, we talk about our joint training in as residents, is that you always want to receive feedback about how you're using that talent, how you're using that
mm,
advantage, right? Are you using it in a net positive way? Are there different ways that you could be using it? It's always important because when you hear about that feedback from others, it further refines that gift that you have. It further refines that advantage that you have. So I hope I touched on a few things.
Yes, you absolutely did. You absolutely did. And it's very interesting, some of these things that you are sharing with us. And some of these we have talked about on this platform when we talk about humility, for instance. Um, I uh, I think that our generation is deprived of this to some extent. And I don't know what the reasoning behind that is, but certainly thinking about it in the form of what advantages you have. In Ghana, there is an adage that says that if you have not gone to anybody else's farm, you think you are the best farmer.
Mm,
And so I think that kind of fits in this scenario where when we see the advantages that we have and the leverage it gives us, it is easy to see where that to make you prideful. But you did allude to our passion for European soccer some time not too long ago. And yes, you may not have the talent, or I may not have the talent to score goals, but you have an advantage to be the one to care for that person who will score the goal. And
mhm,
I see that as an advantage in itself. But then, if we should start saying that because I score the goals, I am better than the one who keeps me fit to be able to score the goals. What if you take that person away? You're not going to be fit anymore. So
mhm.
I think that's a very powerful truth that you have shared with us. But I want you to touch base on two of the things that you mentioned. You mentioned a lot, and I'll review them in a minute. But you mentioned paying it forward and then feedback. And we all know we have worked together, and so feedback can be a very challenging thing. So
Mhm,
let's do a quick crash course on giving feedback or receiving feedback, and then we can do a crash course on paying it forward as well. So,
mhm.
can you elaborate on feedbacks? Because we have seen places or situations where feedbacks have actually led to people giving up on their dreams and things of that nature. So, how do we go about using feedback to grow or to develop our advantage?
So I think feedback is, as you alluded to, a very tricky thing because feedback can be a very much a double-edged sword.
Mm,
I think first and foremost, when it comes to feedback, it's about the intent of the feedback.
mm,
Is somebody doing the feedback to cut somebody down because they see an advantage and they're upset about that and they're trying
mm.
to negate that advantage? Or
Wow.
is somebody seeing that advantage that that person has and is there with them on that journey and wants that advantage to be even more refined and better?
Wow.
So I think when it comes to feedback itself, first and foremost, we have to identify what is the purpose of what it is that we're saying and what we're
Mm,
doing. Second, I think when it comes to feedback, it has to be a very non-judgmental approach.
Correct.
I think that the delivery, I think that the intent matters so much.
Mm.
Because if the person understands the intent with which the feedback is given, they recognize that it's meant for a net positive. Even if it is negative feedback, it's still meant for a net positive because it's something that they can change and work on and a skill that they can harness.
Mm.
It's not easy. It's certainly not easy. I can tell you very much so that giving feedback is difficult, but that in and of itself is a lifelong process.
Mm.
Being able to bring somebody up, whether giving positive feedback and giving negative feedback, I think it's
True.
all about the delivery. It's all about the setting.
Mm. 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 Thank you so much, Dr. P. But it's important, and based on my own experience, one of the things that I think is very true about feedbacks as well is being genuine. I think one of the things that personally you did for me when I was your mentee was the genuineness of the feedbacks that you gave me. At least that's what I sensed.
In the setting that we were in, I wanted you to have all the tools at your disposal and set the foundation so that this way so that it's something that you yourself after graduation could build upon.
True. True.
And the thing is that there's more than one way to do medicine. And
Mm.
I think that what I always tried to do was to try to enhance the gifts that you had within.
Wow.
I will never forget, and this you can, if you allow me to share, even as a first year for yourself when it came to meeting with a family at the bedside
Mm.
when a loved one was passing away, to be able to share that news and to be with them, to guide them, to show them immense empathy in that setting, to give them love and care. You did that so well as a first year that there were some third years that I was just like, no, like he does it so much better. And what I use that as is to say he has a gift.
Mm.
Communication and showing love in that moment is his gift.
Wow.
Let's continue to blossom that gift, that advantage that you have in those moments.
Wow.
And the thing is that maybe you've recognized it, maybe you've seen it, but you have this ability to communicate with others even if they're not in the right mindset or the right emotional setting
Wow.
to receive it. You have the ability to speak to them and to bring them into that environment to listen, to receive. Again, I tried my best to help you develop those gifts,
Wow.
and
Wow.
I will not take any credit for that. So
Oh
that's
no,
that's all
I
within.
will
Mhm.
say thank you, because I mean this is part of the fruit of what you and many have seen in us and given us the grace and the room to actually grow, to be able to sit here talking about these healing points for our audience who, by the grace of God, are all over the globe. So I am grateful for all the efforts that was put in, but I think it goes to echo the importance of being genuine when you are giving feedback. Because, yes, the recipient may not say it, but the fruit of it eventually will show. And so I really thank you for bringing that up. And I wanted you to also just give us a few nuggets on paying it forward, because honestly, that's not something that I think we usually will think about when we think about our own advantages.
Mhm.
So, how do we use our own advantages to pay it forward, and how do we use that mindset or that concept to also develop our advantage?
So when you had spoken to me about the topic of this talk that we had,
Mm.
I kind of thought about what are my advantages, and I'll answer your question about
Oh
paying
yeah,
it forward
absolutely.
using that. So I thought about what are my advantages that I
Mm.
had. And the first thing that came into mind for me was that I was born into a Christian household. That was an advantage that I saw right at birth.
Wow.
another advantage I saw was that I was born into a two-parent household.
Mm,
You know, we see a lot of that where children sometimes are brought up in single-parent households,
correct.
and it's not
Correct.
to say that that's any in any way, shape, or form less than,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
we do recognize that there is something to be said about being brought up in a two-parent household.
Absolutely.
And in the two-parent household that I was brought up in, hard work and discipline were kind of instilled at a young age. Um, I think about another advantage that I have is that I'm a decent communicator and I can make people laugh,
Yes.
and I have a lot of resilience. You know, I've shared with you many times that my journey to get to medical school to be a doctor where I am here had many hiccups,
Mm,
numerous hiccups.
yes.
And if I had less resilience than I do that God gave me, I think my story in this journey would have probably been written and done a long time ago. I
Mm,
would probably may not have been here in this moment, you know?
wow.
And I have a loving wife. I have a family that's extremely supportive. And the final thing, last but not least, is that I'm part of a Bible focused church that I'm a member of, where a prayer life is deeply rooted in what we do. So when I link that to paying it forward,
Mm,
I I try to instill, me and my wife try to instill strong Christian values in our kids. We try to make the topic of God, Jesus, the Bible in our household a regular thing, not something that it's kind of set aside. We make that a
mm.
very prominent thing. We try our best to be good communicators with our children, and as you know, with young kids, you know, being a good communicator, oftentimes you're talking to yourself,
Yes.
because a kid who's got a tantrum, you're really not going to get through much, but you know, it helps to develop
Correct.
that ability to speak. And I think that especially with kids, when they see that, you know, that's something that they will hopefully absorb and build upon too. I think about my kids, them seeing that their parents love each other very deeply. I think that also will pay it forward, because they're able to see what uh, a healthy relationship looks like, and use that. And then the final thing, when it comes to my church, you know, we often talk about the power of prayer,
Correct.
and the power of prayer cannot be understated. It
Mm,
is just a wonderful thing. And I think that when you have congregants who pray for you, and as much as you pray for them,
wow.
it's just synergistic energy, just rising and rising and rising. And those are just a few different examples of how it can be paid forward. You
Absolutely.
may not see it immediately, but you may see it later on down the line.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. P. You know, this is very powerful and eye opening because I've actually never thought about it in that light as paying it forward. We can have a whole new section just on parenting, the advantage of parenting alone. I wanted to, and I think we will probably talk about it in the next discussion. We will talk about the advantage of our spiritual beliefs. We will talk about the advantage of being a part of a church community and things of that nature. But the parent and then you threw in there is just mind blowing to me because how many parents look at raising their children as paying forward the advantages that they had. And I would take it a step further and say, how many parents will even look at raising their children as erasing the disadvantages that they had growing up? And I think that would be a great segue to start our second part of this conversation. Now that we have laid the foundation for what our advantages are and how we can harness them and develop them. So, Dr. P, I will kindly ask you to summarize our thoughts for this part for us, and then we will be back next week to finish our conversation, our thoughts on this thought provoking topic that I believe will certainly bring healing to many who will be able to lay hands on. So I'll turn it over to you to wrap us up.
So I think when it comes to what an advantage is, as I was saying before, we should identify it as a certain set of qualities or skills that help to shape us. Some of these are innate, God given, others are developed over time. And I think that one big thing that we need our advantages for is that it helps us to navigate this tricky thing that is set before us called life.
Mm,
And I think that when we are able to use these advantages responsibly, it helps us to complete those tasks that we have set before us in our lives. And as we go through life, we develop a family, we have friends, and these advantages, when we do it right, helps to lift the people around us up. And the thing also is that as we develop these talents, it helps us to develop into the best version that God wants us to be.
wow. Thank you so much, Dr. P, for that powerful summary that you did for us. And dear audience, we thank you so much for staying with us for our conversation today. We will be bringing you the concluding part of our conversation next week as we look at the phase 2 of what is your advantage. Friends, we have set the foundation, and as you can already see, powerful, powerful healing points that Dr. P has given us today. I told you, he's not just a physician in the clinic or in the office, he is a physician also in communication. We will see you same time next week. God bless you, and bye bye.